Well, shall we talk about deconditioning yourself from social influences? First of all, it's very normal that we have social conditioning. It's actually unavoidable. We are social animals. We are brought up in a social context, and therefore we are going to take on beliefs, patterns, habits, ways of thinking, ways of seeing the world and yourself and others that are informed by other people. Now, why am I doing this video? Well, because I've seen it in myself. I have had recently some experiences with tapping into deeper social conditioning that I was completely unaware of. And that's why I wanted to make this video. But I want to give it a bit of a broader context instead of just making it about me and my process. I will happily share that as well, but also about some of the conclusions and I've come to through this process. So first we have covered what social conditioning is. Now let's look at the idea of deconditioning yourself. Of course, the question is it even possible to decondition yourself? Now, I do not know the answer 100%, meaning I don't know whether you can fully decondition yourself from social influences that you've received throughout your life. And I do actually don't think that this is necessarily beneficial, because they are ideas and beliefs and certain behavioral patterns that are useful. They are beneficial for you. They are beneficial for other people, and it is good when other people are doing them to you as well. So it has its point of view, its value to have certain social conditioning. I guess the biggest issue that people have, or that I have with social conditioning, is that it's conditioned, it is not chosen. It is not something that's done from a conscious choosing, a conscious agreeing and seeing the merit in that behavior. It is conditioned, and so you're just reactively doing that behavior because that's what you've been taught, right? And so that is the issue I have with social conditioning, or any kind of conditioning, is that it's just a habitual pattern. For some other people, this, like for yourself, like that may not be an issue. You may not care about that at all, and that's just fine. It's just how I see it myself. So now that we've looked at or kind of looked at the question whether it's possible to decondition yourself, and I said I don't know, I do know that at least some of it you can decondition yourself, definitely 100%. Maybe it's not 100% that you can get rid of, nor is it not necessarily desirable, but there are things that you definitely can look at and can let go of. That doesn't serve you, that is not a useful pattern. It's actually informed by fear, it's informed maybe by trauma, and you do not want to carry that around with you. And so that is what I'm interested in. So I'm not as much interested in the philosophical debate about what's possible or not possible. I'm interested in what I have experienced, what I've seen with other people as well, that what you can actually create within yourself, because that's actually going to make a difference. And it's not just talking out of my ass and throwing out nice ideas. It's about something that's backed in direct experience, in my experience. So before we go further into that, let me just give you a little bit of a background of what has happened to me, what I have seen myself. Through meditation and sitting, I have started to see social conditioning I was unaware of, which actually is really the hallmark of conditioning, is that you're unaware of it. Because if you are aware of it, if you see it and you reflect on it, it's going to change. You're either going to adopt it, you're going to change it, you're going to go into a different direction. Like, something is going to happen. But conditioning often is totally unconscious. Now, I thought of myself as someone who is a critical thinker, who questions what society does. I have done a lot of work on myself already. I've hired coaches, I've done cleanses, I have done meditation, I've done inquiry, I've done kinds of all things. So I thought that I'm not necessarily someone who has a lot of social conditioning left in the regard of what I was talking about before, the stuff that you actually can look at and take care of. Well, I was totally wrong. just utterly wrong. Yes, I have in large amounts taken care of family patterns that I've been running. I still think there's actually work done there, like there's more there. I have questioned things that I do and what society does, but you don't actually get to the deep stuff this way. What I found is that you get to the deep stuff by sitting in silence. Meditation I found very useful, conducive for that. To sit, not necessarily inquire, but to just sit and let things surface as they surface. Let them come, let them be, and let them go. And when you sit there and you let this happen, and you let this unfold, stuff starts to surface. And for me, what happened, first there was a sense of guilt and shame, and I couldn't put it home. I didn't know where that feeling's coming from. And so I was just sitting with it. I was letting it unfold. There was images coming up from my childhood, from school years, and I felt this intense emotion. I was like, what's going on? The images that I have, the scenarios I'm going through, they are not really warranting this kind of emotional response. They were small things. And yes, I'm aware that maybe at that time they could have been huge, but some of those things, they weren't. I knew that they weren't big things even then. I wasn't like feeling guilt over going to another friend's house in the same town that another friend lived that I used to go to. That was not a big thing then. I do remember that as much. And so today when I was sitting and the guilt and the shame came out again, it suddenly clicked. It suddenly clicked what was going on. I saw that when I was younger, I was regarded as smart. I was regarded as someone who will have a bright future. Some of my peers were looking up to me. Some of the younger ones who had siblings, some of the siblings were looking up to me because I had a good brain. I'm not super smart, but I have a good brain. Yeah, that's true. And so they were looking up to me and they thought I was some kind of amazing guy who was going to do amazing things. And I look at my life now and I don't live this kind of bright future. Yeah, sure, I have nice things. And yes, I have done some things in my life. Sure. But the bright future these people were seeing for me was having an academic career, being very successful. I have some success, but no, it's not very successful by any means. And so I'm not living a life of huge success, a very bright future, as you would say. And so I was feeling shame and guilt because in one way, I felt I let those people down, which of course I haven't, but on an emotional level, it still felt like that. That's where the guilt came from. And the shame, because I have internalized their image of me, which is something that is a very natural process. I don't believe you can actually escape that. Even if they don't say something, the way someone treats you, looks at you, it says a lot about you. And our brain is wired to construct a personality. And so we are going to grab different bits and pieces, almost at random really, of what people think of us and form an image with other life experiences, and then create that way the I, the character. And so this is an example of me sitting and starting to become aware of a fairly deep pattern that involves the past, involves certain beliefs about myself, involves other people's beliefs about me and me internalizing them, involves me, how I'm looking at my current life. Because I could look at my life that I'm living this super bright future, right? It involves all of those things, and had a big emotional response in me. And part of the deconditioning is to start to walk free from having to live up to these kind of expectations, to have that kind of future. You don't have to have this kind of future. You can be free. There's actually no one who tells you that you have to be successful. I mean, there might be lots of people telling you, but there's no rule in the universe that says you have to be successful, or that you have to have a certain life with a certain partner, a certain house, a certain career. That's all in the realm of story. And so deconditioning yourself is to start to see your identity with these beliefs, to start to see how you have been trying to please those beliefs or those expectations unconsciously. And as you become conscious, you can reevaluate. So for example, I can give you another example of deconditioning where I was like, you know what? Why do I need to be productive? Because I came from a family where being productive, getting up early, doing stuff is highly valued. And so I spent some time being a sloth. And what I realized is that I don't like it. I don't like watching TV all day. And so I chose that actually I do enjoy being creative and creating. I don't necessarily call it productive, but creating something that wants to come through and putting myself to a task. So the conditioning of just be productive wasn't very useful. And yet at its core, it did have merit. To have a certain discipline with yourself, to put yourself to something and really grow with that task, to create instead of just consuming. They are good. That feels, for me, that feels better, but it's now consciously chosen instead of just, I have to be productive. Oh my God, I gotta do something. And then feeling bad when you're not doing something. It's like, no, I cannot do something if that feels right. Because I'm not driven by the conditioning anymore. And I can create when that feels right and I really want to do that. You see, it gives you freedom. But not all conditioning is bad. However, the unconsciousness that we have, the blindness that we have, and how we're just executing it, and then how thoughts are layered on top of it, guilt-tripping ourselves that we are not doing something, that we're not as successful as we should be, that we should be doing more or whatever. It creates a very dysfunctional loop. But often this loop is basically in the head, running like a movie, and it's in the body in certain emotions that keep resurfacing. It can also be in certain situations that you keep living in certain situations. You keep being drawn into situations that really aren't serving you. And so you can look at the thoughts and you can work on that level, but you're not going to break the loop. You can look at the surface emotions and you can work with that, but you're still not going to break the loop. You can even see the pattern in how you are going to those situations. and it's not going to break the loop. They are all part of disassembling it. Yes, they all have their part, they all have their value. If you want to break it though, you have to go deeper. And going deeper is not something that you can think your way through. You have to feel your way through, and in my case, sit your way through. To just be and let things unfold. Let them come. And I wasn't doing this sitting practice with the idea of deconditioning myself. I don't even think it's necessarily a great idea to go out and be like, I'm going to now decondition myself. However, just sitting with yourself and being with what is, what arises, does clear things up within you. And when it does, it's liberating and you become more functional because you're not lost in the story about who you should be or what you should be. And you're getting into some of the deep emotional and energetic patterns that you can feel in your body. And as you bring awareness and consciousness into those unconscious realms, they really start to change and shift. And it's maybe not I sit down and I feel and boom, it's changed. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it's a process, it's an unfolding, it's an unraveling of those knots. Often they actually are feeling like knots really, and they start to unravel and they start to open and you start to see, this is what's been going on. Now there's one last thing I want to say around this topic, which is, actually might be more than one, but this is around the deconditioning itself. It is not always easy to see what's going on. Like for example with this like with the guilt and shame. At first I thought, it's because I did X, Y, Z in my childhood. And I would do a forgiveness process. And then at some point I'm like, why is this such a big deal? Like the emotions I feel are like disproportionate to what happened. So I looked at it in a way and I thought there was something to resolve, and maybe that was true. Yeah, it was so surface and it was the wrong angle really. So it takes time for it to show itself to you and to show what it's really about. Because again, on top of those emotional patterns are loops built in. Some of them are around self-blame. You're always the bad guy. And so you see how you did something wrong in your childhood. And of course you are the bad guy again. And so you think that's it. But you're actually still in the loop. You're still in the loop. So you forgive, you let that go. And what I did, I was like, wait a second, why am I always the bad guy? I was a child, like what's the issue here? Okay, I'm gonna forgive the part that is blaming or seeing this as a big issue. And then it went deeper from there, and that was over more than one sit. So as you can see, it is not straightforward. You need to give yourself time, you need to feel into it, you need to really be with it, and you need to let it unfold. You can't force it. You can't force it, just be open, be as open as possible, feel whatever needs to be felt. Do whatever intuitively feels right to do and let it unfold. It will show itself eventually. So that is what I want to say around deconditioning process. Now, one last thing, which is not necessarily related, it's more kind of an umbrella thing. When you do this kind of work, it can get very intense. And so I do, in my profession, I work with people. I'm a coach. I have worked with all kinds of people. I've done all kinds of work with myself as well. It is worthwhile to have someone assist you in the process if you're not familiar with it. With your own psyche and your own terrain, it is useful to have someone who has gone through those kind of processes as well. It is not a have to, but it can be very beneficial because some of the things that surface, they can be very challenging. And so having someone else who can guide you through it or bring you through it is something that I can recommend. I need to mention this just because for your own safety, right? Now, if you don't feel like you want to get a professional, that's fine. You can also go ahead and get someone when you really need it. Or you can just see if you can see it through yourself. And I do encourage you to know that you always can get help. You are not alone in this journey. Okay. That's something that's of importance, especially if you do start to sit for longer periods in stillness. Things, unprocessed things, they do like to bubble up because your system is naturally looking for an equilibrium. It's looking for efficiency. It's looking for being in harmony with itself, really. And having that stuff in you, that's not harmony, I can tell you that. So anyways, these are my thoughts on deconditioning yourself from social influences. There's probably more that can be said around this topic, but I wanted to keep it practical and grounded within what I'm going through at the moment myself. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care and have a wonderful day.